I guess it's time we take a look at the story. I'll be honest, I kinda hate reviewing the story in these games. I've always been at odds at what most Sonic fans prioritize in their games. For me, I've always seen Sonic more as a cartoon character and valued the more lighthearted and simple to its core storylines. That's a big reason future Sonic games pushed me away a bit, starting with Shadow and honestly continuing to this very day with some exceptions. It's hard for me to really feel attached to the storylines presented in games like Sonic Unleashed, Sonic 06, and the storybook games, because they always just feel like they bite off more than they can chew, and it's hard for me to take these characters seriously. It's not that I don't like story in video games. The Xenoblade trilogy is mostly one of my favorite series of all time. It's more so that when I play a platformer about a blue hedgehog, I'm not expecting Shakespeare or to be entertained in some sort of narrative sense. I just want to turn on my brain and go fast. And if there is a story at all, I don't mind if it's just there to give me a few laughs, the way that Sonic Colors did. Sonic fans, I'm gonna remind you I'm in witness protection currently, so don't kill me. So with that perspective in mind, I actually have to say I think Sonic Heroes basically nails the story. Now, don't get me wrong, this story isn't deep. It's barely even coherent at all. It's a goddamn mess. I fucking love it. With Team Sonic, we see the trio running through some mystery desert that's never seen again. I mean, it's not a huge deal, it just looks like the goddamn Looney Tunes desert, and I think that's funny. Anyways, Sonic receives a letter from Dr. Eggman, unveiling his scariest and most deadly invention yet. Paper that can project digital videos on top of it. I love that he went through all this effort to create this paper that shows him speaking, and then he chose to put goddamn impact font on top of it. Ooh, now, what font should I use? Haha, I will choose impact font. My dog is looking at me like I... So basically, Eggman has a super evil weapon that will be completed in a mere 3 days. Okay, Eggman, so why the f would you write this letter and even warn them? You absolute fool. He could have just ended the world otherwise without telling anyone about it. And then, what could even be done at that point? And you know what? This is more of a general question, but why do all these supervillains work so hard to end the world? What benefit does that actually have to them? Great, you just ruined a civilization and society that as is barely functions. You're probably dead with them if you tried to blow up the world or something, but go for it. Switching gears to Team Dark, Rouge commits a felony called breaking and entering. I would dissect this crime and figure out how much jail time she would receive, but no one found that bit funny besides me in the Jet Set Radio video, so it's dead. Okay, so she breaks in and finds Shadow, who's suffering from chronic memory loss. This could be seen as sort of a retcon, as at the end of Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow died, and thus the grand ending of that game probably has a lot less meaning in retrospect. But here's the situation Sega put themselves in, right? You gotta view it from their perspective. They made this cool-ass companion to Sonic, who was a central key character that very clearly immediately was in the ranks of Tails and Knuckles, and then they killed him in the same game he was introduced in. So they kinda had to bring him back in some form or the other, and it was gonna get messy. Plus, there were millions of 10-year-olds threatening Sega executives with Nerf guns. Allegedly. Sonic Team does kind of attempt to cover the plot holes during the story, but this overall thread in general probably leads to more questions than answers. At the end of the team story, it's revealed that Eggman just has this giant warehouse with thousands of Shadow clones. So, was the Shadow in this adventure a clone? Is that why he's just forgetful? I mean, I'm sure it's answered in Shadow the Hedgehog, but that game sucks, so I don't really care. It's a mess, quite honestly, but only if you care about Sonic Adventure 2. And if you don't, this whole story thread doesn't make sense at all. So Sega, please absolutely no one with this story. Good job. Oh, and there's also 123 Omega, who's basically a replacement for E102 Gamma from Sonic Adventure 1. So this team has two characters that have died and been resurrected in some form. I guess it's called Team Dark for a reason, because that's downright depressing. Team Rose's story isn't anything special, but isn't anything bad either, which for a Sonic story makes it brilliant. It's as simple as Amy wants to stalk Sonic to marry him. Yep, that's very normal behavior, making this the second team to commit a felony. Big the Cat wants to find Froggy, and Cream wants to find a Chow called Chocola. That's it. That's the story. I literally do not know what else to say about this. And finally, we have Team Chaotix. Now, imagine being a kid in the year 2003, or like 2005 when I played this. You look at this team and go, oh my god. Wait, who the hell are these guys? Well, Team Chaotix is basically a massive deep cut to a game called Knuckles Chaotix, released on the Sega 32X. Now, imagine being a kid in the year 2024. You hear the term 32X and go, oh my god, Wait, what the hell is that? Well, the Sega 32X was an add-on to the Sega Genesis that would turn the console from 16-bit to 32-bit. It may sound stupid, and that's because it largely was, but at the time it was sort of a novel concept, especially since no one really knew the future of the gaming industry. Imagine if instead of buying a whole new console, you could spend half the price and still theoretically use your hardware to be in the next generation. Now they just charge $500 for a pro version. Anyways, to make something like this work though, you absolutely needed great games to release for it, and so a Sonic title seemed inevitable, and Sega agreed and disagreed at the same time. Yeah, so there was Knuckles Chaotix, which introduced characters you've probably never heard of in the Sonic franchise, such as Vector the Crocodile, Mighty the Armadillo, Espio the Chameleon, and Charmy the Bee. The character that looks the most like Sonic was cut from this team. So yeah, this is kind of the deep cut fan service team, and there were apparently supposed to be even more of these, such as Fang, Bean, and Bark from Sonic Fights, and Metal Sonic, Ray, and Mighty the Armadillo in another team. I see why that was cut, because it's just, like, how do you even write that?